I guess one of them is Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, go Whoopi, Whoopi, Whoopi.
Whoopi is on TV saying, that black folks got these land grants. Well, no.
Worried about the reparations. You worried that black people want reparations. We have American reparations. It started with 20 acres and a mule. There's more to do. People who have
never got it.
No, we did get it. That's how my family got Florida.
Y'all got 40
land.
acres and a mule because
yeah,
my people
we
didn't get none.
Well, you didn't do it. My people. Well, maybe that's because your people didn't come and sit on the front and say, we're not moving until you give us what we're owed.
Well, no. A very small number did, and I think her family was among those, but that gave her the false impression that it had happened for everybody.
There are 3 different programs that were given to white Americans that were not given to black Americans, at least not at rates that would impact us in a racial wealth gap, or that help create the racial wealth gap. Dr. Darity, could you speak to those 3 particular actions?
Well, there's more than 3, but the 3 that we've highlighted in the work that we've done are the following: the Homestead Act, the New Deal, and the GI Bill. And the Homestead Act was a land distribution policy that was instituted in the United States. The legislation was first adopted in 1862 during the midst of the Civil War. And it provided 160-acre land grants to recipients in the Western territories as the nation completed its colonial settler project. So this is land that was a territory that was under Native American possession initially, and the federal government essentially distributed 270 million acres of land to 1.5 million white families. Now, if you say conservatively that a family had 4 members, when in fact in the latter part of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century, families were larger. But let's be conservative. So that would constitute about 6 million people who were recipients of these land patents, and that would be somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 12% of the white population in America around the turn of the previous century. Okay, so that's a substantial government handout, if you will. So, at the same time, the federal government had promised Black Americans who had been enslaved in the United States 40-acre land grants. So 1/4 of the size that was given to white Americans under the Homestead Act. Now, that promise wasn't kept. There were a few Black Americans who did receive land patents, some under the Homestead Act of 1862 itself, primarily in Kansas, and others under the Southern Homestead Act, which actually lasted less than a decade. I estimate that the total number of people who were Black who got these types of land grants might have been about 10,000 persons. And that's less than 1% of the 4 million Black people who were emancipated at the end of the Civil War. So there's a vast difference in this allocation of land. Then the second policy that I mentioned is the New Deal arrangements, which were designed to exclude Blacks from having full benefits. And the tactic that was used to do that was to exclude folks who were farm employees and domestic laborers. But the other thing that was built into the New Deal legislation was the foundation for the redlining project, which essentially starved Black Americans from access to credit that would have allowed them to purchase homes in any location that they so desired. And then the third policy that's relevant here is also connected to home ownership, and that's the GI Bill, which had provisions to support home buying for the returning veterans. And those provisions were executed in a highly discriminatory fashion, so much so that there was a very small minority of the Black returning veterans who got any significant benefit from that. But the white returning veterans received such substantial benefits that this was the foundation for the white middle class that emerged after World War II.
I just found it necessary to remind folks and to educate those people who may not have heard of this, that we didn't just wake up one day in the year 2023, that it does matter, lineage does matter, and it does matter that folks were given land, whether it be 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Where'd the land go? Land doesn't just disappear.
You could have sold it, but then that would give you money also. I think that Trina Shanks Williams at the University of Michigan estimates that there are at least 45 million living white Americans who continue to be beneficiaries of the Homestead Act land patents.
I wonder how many living African Americans or Black Americans are beneficiaries of that 2% that you estimated in the Homestead.
Well, I guess one of them is Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, go Whoopi.
Whoopi is on TV saying that Black folks got these land grants. Well, no. A very small number did, and I think her family was among those, but that gave her the false impression that it had happened for everybody.
Mm. Well, Whoopi, she's got different lineage. I'm gonna leave it there.